showing Sage 100 Contractor, both the estimate and the project management and how it ties together. So one of our focus is really going to be, instead of focusing on the whole program, the thing we're going to be looking at today is using the estimating that's integrated within the solution, how we can use that to flow into project management and improve a lot of our efficiencies. Kind of as an overview, for those of y'all that are familiar with Alliance Solutions, we're the largest provider of Sage construction-related software in the country. You can see by the map here a listing of our major offices and the territories that we cover in some of the different areas. There's the list of some of our software, and so as you can see, we focus strictly in the construction and real estate area. And so the one we're going to be talking about today is the second one on the list, which is the Sage 100 Contractor. For those of you that aren't that familiar with Sage, I'm just going to briefly mention that they're the largest provider of middle market software in the country. There's about 50,000 in the construction and real estate arena. So they have over 2 million customers inside the United States, but about 50,000 of them are strictly in the construction and real estate space on one of the Sage Construction 300, 100, or estimating solutions. Here gives you a little flavor of what those different products are in the construction and real estate. Sage is based in Beaverton, Oregon for their construction and real estate arena. About 400 employees support this from various avenues, and this is obviously the one that we're going to be talking about today is the Sage 100 Contractor. Here gives you a little flavor of how deeply Sage is in that construction market. The listing of customers, projects, a number of subcontracts per year that they do, and they have about 40 years of experience with the softwares that we're showing you today. So they have a lot of experience, which gives us the ability to be able to change the product as the market changes out there. So here's the one we're going to be focusing on today, which is our Sage 100 Contractor. And when a lot of times people are leaving QuickBooks or Peachtree or a more archaic system, and one of their goals is, how can I save time and efficiency on the solutions without having to retype things over and over again? As just a little administrative task, if you have any questions that come up during this, feel free just to go into the chat box on the GoToWebinar, put a question in there. It's being monitored, and it'll be brought up during the session. Hopefully we can get your questions answered as we go along. So the thing we're going to be focusing on the Sage 100 Contractor today is truly looking at the estimating and how it integrates with purchasing, budgets, proposals as we flow through. So I'm going to spend very little time on the PowerPoint and go into the software very quickly. Here kind of shows you the different avenues within the program that it covers. Obviously, we usually start with estimating, flow into production, flow into accounting, and then do our analysis from both financial and job costing at the end. So the one area we're going to focus on today is looking at that estimating solution, how it's built into the software. And a big key is how we have used the same cost codes, the vendors, the estimating categories, so that we don't have to constantly be able to go in and out of programs to be able to work from proposal all the way through to actively running the job. This gives you a little bit of visual of what we're going to go into on the estimating screen. So again, it gives us the ability to be able to create our own databases. A lot of people will go into this program from Excel. And so a lot of times what our consultant will do is work with you on actually taking what you've done in Excel, replicating it within our estimating solution, and then pushing it to the rest of the program. And then obviously we can do estimating in Excel, but here's the big key is now if I'm doing it within the system, I can push it off to scheduling, subcontracts, purchase orders, change orders, project documentation, push it to the rest of the system without having to retype things, which can cause mistakes and slow down the process. So let's jump right into the program. I'm going to open up Sage 100 Contractor. You should be able to see it on my screen okay now. And so within this, one of the things, the way they built Sage 100 Contractors, to make it a little bit simpler to be able to find your way around. On the left-hand side, you'll see here is our different options for different parts of the program, from estimating to project management to accounting. In the center here is Flowcharts. So the one you're looking at now is a custom-built flowchart that I did. Some of the ones that are in the system is there's flowcharts on payroll. There's flowcharts on inventory. So each one of those buttons across the top gives us a different flowchart. So what that allows you to do is we can customize these flowcharts by user, and then it makes our life just a little bit easier as we go through that learning curve to be able to be up and running on the solution. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Home tab here where I custom built this tab out here, and then that way it gives us the ability to be able to look at those different icons out there, see how they flow, and we're going to focus on, again, going from a takeoff all the way through the system. So if you look at the flow chart you see here, we start off with takeoffs. We can then flow into purchasing, budgets, subcontracts. We can then flow from reports to there, flow through accounting. We also have the ability to go from takeoffs into scheduling. So let's start off first with the takeoff screen. So I have a couple of examples in here. I'm going to start off first with a simple one, which is a simple custom builder putting together a proposal inside the system. So one of the options we first have within the estimating is how do we want to organize our estimate? The way I look at this a lot of times is people do this in Excel, and they put little tabs across the bottom of Excel to separate out parts of their proposal. On the when I'm doing a custom home, I may break out different bid items based on base, alternatives, allowances, options, etc. If I'm a commercial builder, I may base it on what my scheduled values are going to be going over to progress billing. So depending on what my goal is, I can put this all on one bid item or separate into multiple bid items. So now I'm going to go in just the base house bid item. So I'm going to auto fit this. You see when I auto fit that, it works similar to Excel where I can adjust the columns so they fit within my screen no matter how large or small it is, so it makes it easy to be able to maneuver through the system. So here's just an example of, I have some different categories across the left-hand side, different units of measure, quantities, cost. It's going to obviously take the quantity and cost, multiply it across to get an extended cost. This part over here on the left, I can do this in Excel just as easy as I can do it in here. Here's where the value starts to come in. I can tie my subcontractor or supplier in here directly to those line items, similar to what you might do in a side Excel, but I'm doing it within the system. I can also categorize where in the budget I want to put these line items and whether they're going to be for materials, subcontract, or other. I'm going to open this screen up a little bit. You can see over here on the right, I have a column in here where I can type in the scope of work. This comes in real handy if I'm going to export this to a subcontract, because a lot of times when we're thinking through how to build this job out and what those subcontracts are going to do, a lot of times we're thinking about that while we're developing the proposal. So I can put those notes in there, and that way they'll automatically export to the subcontract without having to remember it again. The column next to it is my estimator notes. This allows me to put in notes into myself on why I'm doing certain things. And so it allows me to be able to refresh if I come back to this later or another estimator comes in to understand why I did that a certain way. As I scroll down, you may see how I did in this example here. How I just didn't put the HVAC bid in, but I put in the scheduled values of that HVAC bid. So that's going to make it easier for me when I export this to automatically have this flow to subcontracts without having to worry about then breaking it out one more time. Now this is probably our simplest form of doing an estimate. I have categories, quantities, costs, I'm multiplying them across and getting them in there. So let's say I'm a home builder doing this. I can come over here. I can get a recap now. This is my budget on the job. And again, it takes those cost codes, summarizes it to come up with a budget. If I want to look at the cost types, how much do I have in suppliers, subcontractors, my own laborers? What does it look like on this job? Vendors, these are the subs that I've chosen to work with, both suppliers and subcontractors on this job. So coming back to the individual area out here in the takeoff, I can choose line by line to put an overhead and markup percentage in here, or like a lot of home builders do, I can just put a 10% markup at the end of it, and then that gives me a number to work with. So now I have my amounts for my proposals, I have the amounts for my budgets, I also have all the amounts for the subs I'm going to hire. So if I take this information, hit my print button, let's take an example of this particular one here. I'm going to do a print. So here's an example of a very simple proposal where I'm grabbing some different line items in here. I'm doing it by bid item. And so the proposals are probably one of our most customized screens outside of subcontracts, where we make this look the way you want it to look for your customer. Also, we have the ability, if you look at the top right-hand corner, I can export this proposal. So if I click on my little Outlook button here, it'll automatically pull up my Outlook button and allow me to be able to send this proposal as an attachment directly to the customer. Again, trying to get our efficiencies there so we're not double touching this multiple times. Over here just shows you an example of some different types we may want to do. If I want to do a more sophisticated proposal with a lot of wording on it, I may develop something like this that has various words in the agreement, has payment terms, a total price, a way to sign it, may have some quantities listed of how I came up with this. So there's different ways depending on what people are using to be able to create a proposal. We do have some tools also that allow us to export this to Word into a pre-formatted Word document and then to be able to have the proposal directly into there. So this is just a quick example of doing a home and dropping it through. And before I show the export capabilities, I'm going to close this and I'm going to open up a little more detailed takeoff. So this one you can see, I broke out the bid items almost like schedule values. So now I'm going to take a little example of doing a commercial job and some of the options we have out there. So this is a commercial job I've been working on. So here it shows me my general conditions, and so I have supervision, permits, my unit of measure, my quantity cost. Again, same columns in here. And on this one, I don't have suppliers in some of these because I'm going to self-perform some of them. If I go over to mechanical, this shows me my mechanical, and so it's showing me my plumbing, my HVAC, my sprinkler subcontractor. So again, what I've done is taken each one of these categories and I put in a quantity and cost based on the bid that came in. I put the supplier in that gave me the bid and where in the budget I want to be able to put this information. So let's take this for an example. I'm going to take this particular mechanical bid item, and let's say I wanted to add a specific part to it. So instead of just having categories for subs, I actually want to do a part. So I'm going to change my view to a more detailed view. This is the same information. Let me put up my screen here. This is the same information that we were dealing with before, but now I've opened it up into a more detailed view and added some more columns. So in here, I could click on my little drop down, and we can create a parts list for you. So if you're a specialty contractor, you have a list of parts, we can take Excel, upload those Excel parts, and immediately create a database for our items. So any of these items that are in here that I want to be able to drop in, I can drop in individual items and put a quantity associated with it, and now I have it within my estimate. Let's say I wanted to drop multiple items in. I can grab various items within this and bring them in as a group. I'm just going to very simply put in, we're going to buy 10 of each one of these and calculate it out. So we can do groups of them, we can put individual ones, and then another thing we're able to do is, let's say we don't know the name of it, but we know it's PVC, and I'm not sure the name, so find everything with PVC in it. So now I can find everything with the word PVC, and I find the 4-inch pipe I'm looking for, and now I can drop it in and put in my quantity. So by building that database, it allows us, without having to retype everything over again, I can have them already built into there. Now one more extension is, we have assemblies in here. So an assembly is a group of parts and pieces. So if I have an assembly to install a commercial dishwasher, all I do is put in, I'm installing one of these, calculate it out, and it'll tell me how many parts, hours, and everything else I need within this to be able to do these various line items. And so within this, it allows me to be able to take groups of items and bring it together into the into the estimate. So again, I don't have to retype each one of these line items over and over again because they're all going off the same unit of measure. If I knew which supply house I was going to buy this from, if I knew I was going to buy this from Home Depot, I can just drop in the supplier. Let's say I got a quote on these particular items from another supplier, so I go to my supplier list here, and I'm getting these from Lakeshore Plumbing. And so now I'm going to assign these items as ones I'm getting from Lakeshore Plumbing. So now I have all the pieces together to be able to run through and create my proposals on here. I'm going to do one other thing here. I'm going to go back and change my view one more time back to the simple view. Now we have the same line items. All I've done is by changing the view is hide some of the columns in here. So now if we look through and we look at our recaps, I'm going to hit save here. So if I do my recap by cost code, these are the CSI cost codes I'm using within the system. It'll show me how much cost I have in each one of the different line items, what my extended profit's going to be on each one because I put a markup in the line items. If I want to look at it by bid item, now as a commercial contractor, a lot of times we want to organize our estimate by bid item, so then we can push these things out. And within that bid item, what it allows us to do is push this out to the AI billing, which I'll show you in a little while. That way, we again don't have to type this all over again. If I want to see which vendors I've selected in here, it'll show me all the vendors I've selected. And again, I've selected it by line item. So those vendors are both suppliers and subcontractors. If I want to see a budget by bid item, I can see that and be able to run through it. And lastly, I'm going to look at all of the scheduling tasks I have out there and see how much money I have in each one of the scheduling tasks. The scheduling task was another column I had hidden, but for each one of those same line items, I can assign it to a schedule. And so I'm going to show you how that flows across as we go through. So if I look at my bid item here, we can see the bid summary. We can see that my total markups were 19% gross margin, which came to a $3.6 million bid. I can click on one button here and update this particular contract on the job. And so now I have the contract updated properly. So this is my job setup screen. And so now I've tied that update in there directly so I can make sure this is handled properly. Also, I'm going to tie it to the person we're doing the work for. So now I have all the pieces together. So now I can turn around with this. I'm going to hit save, hit print again. And let's look at now if I want to do a proposal based on bid item. So again, there's different ways depending on what your goals are on doing it by bid item, by material, labor, equipment sub, by cost code, CSI cost code. We can show various formats depending on what our goal is on how we want to present this and how we're used to presenting this to our customers. So that gives you a little feel for bringing these, and in these takeoffs we're able to, a lot of times what we'll do is we will export these to Takeoff Files, so that allows me to make templates out there. So I can have a template based on models of homes that I do. I can have templates based on type of commercial projects that I do. Same thing that we do in Excel when we copy and paste an estimate. We can create templates out there so that we can use them over and over again. So now we've gotten the job out there and we've turned it into a live job. So all I would do is open up the job here, change it to a current job, and now I'm going to start operating it. If I was in Excel right now, I'd have to go in for the first time to Sage 100 Contractor, add the job, put the budget in, put the purchase orders in, put the subcontracts in. But since I've started with it inside the application, let's show you how easy it is to push it out. First thing I'm going to do is add the budget. I click on one button, the budget is now added. So if I drill down into the job again, there's a button down here called Budget. There's the budget. So I've just pushed this budget out to now make it a live budget in the system by CSI code, broken out between material, labor, equipment, and sub. When we set up contractors, we set up those CSI codes if you're a specialty by your specialty grouping or whatever you're used to on how you want to track your budget versus actuals. So that's the budget out there. Let's say I want to create all the subcontracts for this job. Here's a listing of every line item that I listed as a subcontract and put the subcontractor in there. So I'm going to add myself as the subcontractor, as the person handling it, and click on Export. Now, as easy as that, I just created about 10 or 12 subcontracts. So again, let's drill down to the job. I'm opening the job up. This just keeps me from having to jump into the subcontract module because I know I have quick access to all the subcontracts underneath the job window. Here is the 11 subcontracts I created in the system just by pressing one button. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the last one we did. Here is the subcontract information that came, again, directly out of my estimate. Now, if you look at this, all this information was in that estimating takeoff. The job, the vendor, the description, the cost category, the amount. All that information was in there. If I scroll back, remember seeing this? This was our plumbing bid out there. And so this showed our rough in, top out, and fixtures. So the reason I did it in detail in my estimate is so now it flowed directly to my subcontract screen in detail. Now this is ready to be sent out and get signed by the subcontractor. I can press on my little print button here, and I'll show you an example of just a subcontract we use in the system. I'm going to get rid of my defaults here. So let's say our attorney said this is what my subcontract should look like, so we're able to put it in the form design in the system, and then we can print this directly out of the system. Now the normal flow would have been, I would have taken this from Excel, taken it to my software, added each one of those lines in, put the amounts in, and then generally I would have taken those same amounts, gone over the Word, and typed it into my subcontract. Now I'm able to do it all as one simple step, and you were able to see how quickly I created 11 subcontracts again without retyping it. Now, once I have the subcontracts in the module, I can add notes to it. I can add a scope to it. So I can enter notes about the scope, print the scope on the subcontract. All those things we can handle now that we're in the subcontract. So it just really speeds the process up. I'm going to close this module for a second. Now let's look at purchase orders. So I'm going to export the purchase orders. So here's a listing of all the purchase orders, and so I'm going to select myself as the one in charge of them and export these. Same concept with purchase orders. I'm going to open up the screen, and there's a button down here at the job screen for purchase orders. There's a listing of the 4 purchase orders I just created. So I'm going to go in there, and I'm going to open up the Home Depot one because I know it's going to be a large one. Let me hide a column in here. So look at the information I was able to export from the estimate. This is Home Depot. This is the job 23. Those are all the parts and pieces and unit measures and quantities and cost codes associated with that. So now if I was doing this into Excel, I would either have to retype all these items in here or copy and paste it from Excel within this. But since it's integrated, it automatically comes into here and makes it real quick to be able to work with. Take an example of one of our printouts. Here's an example of taking that, printing it into a purchase order within the system. Now our purchasing and our subcontracts, all the forms we see in the system have the ability to be able to edit it and modify it to meet our needs. So if we want to add some different terminology, move the columns around, add notes in here, we can do all those sorts of things and bring them together. Now a lot of people ask the question, what if I export a purchase order or subcontract and I want to change it while it's in there? Is it tied back to the estimate? No, this is a one-way push. So when I push things out from the estimate, it creates the purchase order, it creates the subcontract. Now I can edit it if I want to. So if I just want to add something in here, and then just put it on the system, I need 10 feet of that, and it's $250 a foot, and it's going to go into this cost code. Type it correctly. So I can just add these things as we go along, and so it doesn't lock me into that estimate. So if I'm doing a buyout or buying it out cheaper, I can always modify it in the purchase order before it goes live, and then I could change this purchase order to opened, make it approved on this date, and it's ready to go. Now here's a great example of if I'm doing a purchase order, if this is going to make it exceed the budget, it'll allow me to be warned about it and tell me whether I'm warned or not. I'm going to open up my little warning session here. And so what this warning is I have in the demo is I cannot add a purchase order that's going to push me over budget. So I'm going to change this to no warning so we can go ahead and save this. So now if we look at what we've been able to do so far is we've been able to add the budget, add the purchase orders, and add the subcontracts directly off this system from exporting it from the estimate. So again, instead of retyping those three things individually, since I started with the basic estimating, it's pushing it all out to the individual modules. It saved me a ton of time. Let's do the last piece in here. We got two more pieces I want to export. One is going to be the schedule. So you remember we had the task out there. So I'm going to change my view to look at only the task and cost codes. So here are the tasks associated with each line item. If I go over to concrete, concrete has a task. If I go over to metals, it has a task. So by doing that, this is a scheduling task that is separate from our cost code file. So this is our job 23. I'm going to export out of, exit out of here. And let's go into scheduling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in job 23 at the top. We've got a blank schedule. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to import those takeoff tasks. And so what it does is a very simple import. It takes every task that I have on that one, brings it in, gives me a start date, and gives me a simple duration of 1. So now I can come in here and I can edit this. Give me one thing here. Control on my mouse there, I apologize. So in here what I can do is I would usually come in here and edit this, put in the exact days each one of these tasks would do. Once I do that, then I can come in here and calculate it, and it's going to adjust the task out there. So not only did it bring the task in from estimating, now I put the start date on here. So I'm going to adjust the start date to, let's do this on 1/5, recalculate it out, and now it's going to lay it out when those items are going to come in. So not only did it bring in the task and put them in order, but now if I click on these, you'll notice that it also brought in the subcontractor here. So each line that has subcontractor, it automatically brought in the sub that's going to do that section of the work. And so if I scroll through here, we can see all the subs doing the different tasks out there. So again, now I don't have to type those subs all over again and put them in the system. They're already connected to the schedule. So what happens usually when we're running the project, we're adjusting the project, we're tweaking it, and so we can adjust the schedule as we go along. If I go back to my little schedule here, I can grab my move task, and I can move things around that get delayed. So I can adjust things that get delayed and save it, make notes about why they changed. But since I have each subcontractor tied to a task, now it makes it easy to notify the subs. So I'm just going to save this and export out of scheduling. And let's go into one of the reports I can get out of scheduling. So I'm going to go into job 23. That's the job we're working on. And let's see all the subcontract notices I could send out. So this shows me for Home Depot where I'm sending them to do cabinets, or Reliable Steel when they're coming in. And if I scroll through, these are all the subs that I've attached to a certain task within my job. So I can physically email these out, print them out, hand them out, give them to the project manager, whatever it might be. But now I have it all tied together. So these are all tied back again to that original estimate where they came from. If I have a sub that's working on multiple jobs, this is what their notice would look like. It would show the different jobs they're working on, when their scheduled dates are, when the start and end is, and what the tasks are. So it makes it nice to be able to communicate with our subs by email. We can also print out a call list that we can use and call our subs and let them know what they're supposed to do over the next couple of weeks. So again, having that integration from estimating feed into the other parts of the program can make things go a lot smoother. Now, we've done the estimating, we've pushed it out, we've done our job with purchase orders and subcontracts. Now let's go into the Project Work Center. I'm going to go in here for job 23. So in job 23, this is where our project managers will usually reside once we've taken a job and now we're operating it. What it does is it's a portal into the system for one job only, ignoring the rest of the jobs in the system. So let's see some of the same information we saw. If I click on budget, it pulls up the budget on that particular job and shows me what budget's in there. If I want to see all the purchase orders, it'll show me all the purchase orders on the job and again allow me to drill down into it. So not only can I do this from the actual job screen, but we have a working screen here within project management. Now, what we see a lot of people do with the process is I'm going to open up this particular purchase order. I'm going to put it on the project manager's hot list and save this and refresh this. So now notice what that project manager sees. Any item in the system that's listed on his hot list will show up in his little window there of things that they need to look at. These could be purchase orders that haven't been signed yet, subcontracts waiting on a signature back, change orders that haven't been approved yet, progress bills that haven't had percent updates on them. Anything that shows up on my hot list, as a project manager, I can drill down into it and go right to the transaction. Come over here, approve it, dispute it, whatever I'm going to do as a project manager, and then go back in and continue to work through my hot list. So this is a nice place for a project manager to be able to find information about their jobs. And if I want to pull up a schedule, it's all in one place for them. So they're not having to jump around to different menus. They're able to focus on that one job, run reports, do data entry, all the way through the system. So let's go back. Now again, we've been working this job for a while. I'm going to show you some reports now that we can get out of it. So let's look at purchasing first. I'm going to take one that we've been working on another job, give you a visual of what a purchasing report looks like. So this allows us to see what we ordered by line, what we received by line, which went through accounts payable, and what our variances are. So line by line, it gives us the ability to be able to see how well we're doing on each one of the purchase orders. Some of the controls the system has, you can lock it down so that accounts payable can never exceed the purchase order amount when an invoice comes in. It'll reject it. You can also keep a person from creating a purchase order if that purchase order is going to put them over budget. Now let's look at a subcontract audit. We'll look at a couple of examples here. It's an example of a one-page summary for each subcontract on the job. So it lists the subcontractor, the amount, any changes that have occurred, any invoices that have occurred against it that have come in to draw against that, and then a summary of what that subcontract looks like. And so this one prints it out so it's one page per subcontract. Now a lot of people like to be able to see more of a scheduled values look to their subcontract. So let's take a look at find one that's got some values on it. Here's an example of one. So this one shows you a particular subcontract with Aaron's Concrete on job number 4. Shows you each cost code, each scheduled value we have out there, the amount of subcontract, the changes, total subcontract, invoice to date, how much is remaining. And this report was customized to be able to put a requested amount on there if your project manager is the one telling you how much of this we're going to pay, so that you don't have to worry about how it's going to come through from the sub. You can have the project manager be the one that leads that process. So that's just one of many reports we're able to do on subcontracts. Some of the other reports that it's feeding into, the job cost report. So this is a simple budget versus actual. But again, remember how this came about is that these budgets will come about directly from that basic estimating. And then as the purchase orders and subcontracts and other AP invoices come in, all the jobs will be updated. And the nice thing is it gives us the ability to drill down into the transaction detail if we have any questions about where this data came from. So we don't have to worry about running multiple reports. The committed cost report, this is probably everybody's favorite when they leave QuickBooks or Peachtree, because we can't get this data with those two softwares. This allows us to look at budget versus cost versus actual, and then see how much money we have left over. Now let's talk about the billing side. We've been talking about the cost side a little bit, so I'm going to reopen that Takeoff. I'm going to do it for that GC job we're working on. Now if I go to my recaps, just as a reminder, I organize this by these bid items. So here's my summary of my total estimate by bid item. The reason I did that is because these are the items I want to use for my scheduled values over in the AI billing. So what I can do is export my proposal by bid item. That's the first thing I'm going to do. So now I've exported it by bid item. So now I'm going to close out of here. I'm going to go into my AI billing. So I'm going to go over to projects, and I'm going to go into my progress billing. So I'm going to select job 23, put in an item in here. It's going to be my first one, and the billing date's going to be on the 15th, and it's going to be once a month. So now what I want to do is I want to import that proposal by bid item. I'm going to hide a column in here. So notice what it did. Again, without having to retype this information all over again, it automatically brought it into my progress bill. The only thing else I have to do is make sure I have whatever my retention is going to be. I can put that in here. I'm going to take off I'm not going to make this taxable. I'm going to save this. Just to get a starting point. So now it's ready to start moving forward and doing the progress bill on it. So on this particular one, if I want to do a progress bill, let's say these items are 25% done. This one is 10% done. This one is 100% done. Same thing that people are doing right now in a spreadsheet. I can use my little calculator to calculate out the current column. So now I have exactly how much is in completed, current, retention. Okay, I'm going to save this, and then without leaving the system, I can create my AI lookalike form. Now, most people, if they're not working with an integrated system, they're taking these scheduled values from that Excel template, putting in another Excel template to do their progress bills, and then rolling through the cycle and printing it out there. Once they print out that AI progress bill in Excel, they get back into their accounting system and post the invoice. Within our system, right now I haven't posted an invoice yet. All I've done is send out, and so it gives me the ability to submit this to the owner. So I send this out. They may come back with some changes, so I come in here and make this 20%, recalculate it, send it out, and then resubmit it, re-email it out to them. And remember, we can email it just like we did with the proposals. Once it looks good, I just click on Post. It'll post the invoice for me, and I'm done. Next time I want to come in and do a progress bill, I just roll this one forward. It rolls all the current to previous, and I start the whole process over again. So again, trying to find ways we can save time within our admin work, within our flow of the job, so we're not duplicating things and doing things 5 or 6 times. I'm going to pull up a one area within my project management I want to touch on before we go to the cloud application is it gives us the ability to be able to, within the system, put a daily field report in each day. I can put in hours that were there each day. If I'm a GC, I can put in my subs that were there each day. If I'm a specialty contractor, I can put in my equipment that was there at the job site each day. And if I'm a specialty dirt contractor, I can put how many units I complete each day. By doing this in my daily field report, this feeds to the rest of the system, feeds to payroll, equipment allocation. It'll even feed to unitary billing without having to retype anything over again. So that kind of talked about some of the key parts within our takeoffs that we're able to feed to the other parts of the program without retyping things. I'm going to open up a screen here of the cloud application that feeds into this. Now, a lot of people, if you have an iPad or a laptop out in the field, Microsoft has the technology with remote desktop to remote in and do all the things we've been doing right now directly into the system. But a lot of people may have an iPad out in the field and they don't want to remote into the server. They just want the easy access to some reports and some data entry items. That's where Sage Construction Anywhere came from. So this allows us, and it syncs up with Sage 100 Contractor by a minute-by-minute basis and keeps it up to date. And so some of the things we're able to do is we can do time entry out in the field, we can store documents out in the field, and we can run reports out in the field. So if I click on one of the projects that I'm working on, I can see if there's any time out there. If there's a report I want to run, I can select the report and run that report directly from the field. It'll come back to the once it runs, it'll come back, display it, allow me to be able to see that particular report. And so it gives us some of the capabilities to be able to look at this data and flow it through from an iPad or an Android app without having to worry about bouncing around and going through different applications or remoting into the server. One of the things that a lot of people like on the Sage Construction Anywhere is the ability to store documents. So these documents are stored out in the cloud, can be shared with subcontractors, architects. They can be controlled by revision control. They can be controlled by which folder they're in out in the job site. So like here's an example of somebody storing their daily field reports out in the cloud. The cloud application also has the ability to be able to keep images out there. So if I'm taking pictures at the job site, the Sage Construction Anywhere has an iPhone and an Android app that you can take pictures, upload it, select the job, select the folder, and then this information is out there ready to be able to be viewed on, again, a laptop, an iPad, whatever else I have out in the field. And so now I can grab that information. It could be a set of drawings. It could be a PDF of an RFI, a submittal report, whatever it might be. I can store it out in the cloud, get access to it anywhere in the world that I have internet access. So it makes it kind of handy. This is one application that you're going to see Sage slowly building out. Right now they can do time, store documents, run reports, see some basic things about the job. But as this grows, this continues to sync up addresses, jobs, people, everything like that within the system, and allows us to be able to do more and more communication outside the system. So as we went through the process here, the main goal today was to show how we went from estimating all the way through the system and to be able to flow it through and to be able to see how using estimating within the system can speed things up and flow things through the system without having to duplicate or do things twice. Do we have any questions that we haven't covered yet today? I'll look at the chat box for a minute and see if we have any that have come up. There's one that just came up about the timeliness of posting transactions. Yeah, there are some systems that when you post, you have a batching process. Someone has to batch it each day or each week. With Sage 100 Contractor, when you save an item, it's automatically accessible throughout the system. I have another question in there about, does it tie into any other estimating programs that are more sophisticated? Yeah, there is. Those of y'all that are familiar with Sage Estimating, formerly known as Timberline Estimating, it allows you to be able to use that as a standalone estimating tool, and it shares jobs and cost codes, and you can do your estimate within that, use BIM applications, use various on-center applications, and when you're done, feed the proposals, the budgets, the purchase orders, and subcontracts directly into the system without having to retype anything over again. It's a good question. Well, if we don't have any more questions, what we'll do is we'll follow up. Feel free to follow up with us if you have any questions about whether this system would be beneficial for your group, if you're on Sage 100 Contractor, if adding estimating would be beneficial, or if you're looking at it for a new software, if you think this may improve some of your efficiencies, help you can control costs, and allow you to be at the job site a lot more instead of doing paperwork. Let us know. We'll put at the tail end of this an Alliance email address and also the phone number. So feel free to reach out to us. Look forward to helping you in the future and best with your projects down the road.